Live. Steve and Sonia Higgins, thank you so much for being here.
No problem. It's lovely.
Thank you for having us on. This is exciting.
This is quite a mind fuck for me, I got to say, because you guys are from Coco and Vine, the really beautiful Instagram account that is just so picturesque with regards to the way that you guys are doing video and food content for cafes in Sydney and Melbourne, and I believe a couple places around the world, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
Anywhere we travel, we capture something because there's a story there.
Now, both of you separately, even though you're married, you're both
Yes.
separately a part of my past.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right?
So, Sonia, I've known since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Our family, all the kids in our family were friends. We all grew up together.
Absolutely, yeah.
And her brother Jono and I are super, super close. And he's in the coffee industry. And Sonia didn't come from the coffee industry. Sonia's come from corporate. And Steve was involved with my music business.
Yeah, so cool.
So
Small world from the US.
It's just so bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre. And so it's such a pleasure for me to have you both on the podcast. And I didn't even know you were doing this business until I was in October in Melbourne, and we were at the kickoff event for the Melbourne Map It Forward event.
That's right.
That was a great event.
And I saw you there. I'm so glad you had a good time. You got some fucking amazing photos. It was so
fun.
good.
Yeah,
So-
I love that.
So you're both from corporate, both not in the hospitality industry. Tell us how you ended up working in what you're doing now. And well, maybe we start with what exactly it is you're doing now, because Coco and Vine isn't the only project that you're working on. So do you guys want to tell us about that?
Yeah,
I talk too much. So
it's the joy of being married. You just talk for each other, right?
Fun.
So if we interrupt each other, it is out of absolute love that we just keep finishing each other's sentences. We both came from corporate, and we decided about a couple of years ago that we actually met working together. So we missed working together. So we said, let's go off and do something that is really interesting. So we run 3 businesses. We had started the Coco and Vine when I was still in corporate. With 2 of our amazing friends that we have known for a really long time. Stephen and Sasha have been friends for, almost 20
we're essentially
years.
brothers, so
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so while we were still in corporate, we all kind of had our corporate jobs and we wanted to do something creative. The boys really wanted a platform for, improving their and sharing their beautiful photography. We were doing little, hustle gigs on the side, right?
Yeah. And it really is beautiful. Like that, it really is beautiful.
But it's a learning experience, and that's what we love. The whole photography, telling stories, and then the video came along on top of that. So it's a great platform to do that. And then the talent behind it. So the talent in the coffee industry is just endless. And that people have amazing stories. So that's what really we wanted to capture.
So that's Coco and Vine, and that's how that started. Because the boys do amazing work. Sasha and Stephen
and the models. Like there's a whole bunch of you eating burgers and drinking.
That's just some cheap talent.
Yeah.
No one wants to see an old lady eating burgers.
You're so old. Careful, lady. You're younger than me.
Speaking of young, we've got the whole gamut. So Sasha's little girl, Sandy.
I saw,
kid models. She's amazing. She tells
so
great
awesome.
stories.
Yeah,
you cover the kids stuff too, don't you?
Yeah.
We do, and it's so much fun having Sammy with us, and so we Sasha and Mavis and Sammy as a family, and us too.
Yeah.
When we all go out, it's so much fun. Like over Christmas this year, we just explored all the back streets in Melbourne, and it was so good to just be kind of a family together doing all of this stuff. Leveraging and sharing the boys' beautiful work in a really great medium that, we're finding that the industry is really appreciating. People are contacting us because of the quality of our video and our photos, as much as they are enjoying hanging out with us and sharing what they do. And so Cocoa and Vine came out of, we really wanted to do something creative. We wanted to leverage all our skills and all our various backgrounds. So between all four of us, we've got Indian, Malaysian, Singaporean, Italian, Irish,
Canadian.
US, Canadian. So it's such a beautiful
Diversity.
representation of Australia and around the world. And we all travel a lot, so we get to
and some of my background is consulting, strategy, management, and technology. Sasha's technology and project management. Mavis is across all the technology stuff, sales, support, and all that stuff. So we bring all that together because we want to see how can we use those skills in this space and learn at the same time. And as you know, the social media space is constantly changing. So it gives you something new to learn every day.
Yeah. So that's what we call the fun side of the business. And then Steve and I run two other parts. One, which is a social impact consultancy business. So we work with a lot of corporate foundations, not-for-profits, social enterprises, really leveraging our background and skills in helping them, I guess similar to IMAP It Forward, is creating a pathway and consultancy service and really practical advice about how to have a sustainable business that is for purpose. And we help broker relationships between corporate foundations and not-for-profits. We help not-for-profits build their capability because they're, especially in Australia, I know that in the US, it's so professional. It's a career. You go into it and it's treated like a real enterprise. Australia is just burgeoning in that space. And so the capability and the skills that they need is starting to grow, and they need support to do that. And so we really wanted to do something that was meaningful. And so we have loved spending the last 2 years developing these beautiful relationships and have purpose in our work, and doing things that are actually benefiting society and leaving it a little bit better.
It's using those corporate skills that we use to sell products and all those things, but turn it into for purpose. Helping social enterprises do what they do. And
then we get to tell stories as well. So we use our video skills in what we call the various stories to help those social impact organizations get a really accessible product, which means they don't have to pay, $100,000, $200,000 for a social impact campaign. They can work with us, and we help really tell the grassroots stories of the people that they're benefiting or what they're doing as an organization so that they can share it on social media. So lots of our Cocoa and Vine experience and how people engage and what to do on those various platforms has really helped us in our other businesses, because then we get to kind of share with not-for-profits who often don't know a lot in that space, unless you're a really young not-for-profit who has leveraged, social media and their digital platforms to their best advantage. A lot of the, more longer-term institutions don't know how to use it. So we get to do all the cool stuff on Cocoa and Vine, but then
try things out there because as you know, the food and coffee space is very competitive.
Very.
So if you can do anything that gets any traction there, it's going to have a better opportunity to work in the social space.
I've got to ask you, all three of us left the corporate world to pursue our passions.
Corporate refugees, I call us.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, I'm 18 years a corporate refugee and never go back. How did you guys find it now 2 years out of it?
We
love it.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh, so liberating. And I think being able to be flexible and experiment and innovate without all the bureaucracy and kind of risk aversion that a lot of corporate does have, and rightly so. They're dealing with massive organizations. They have a responsibility of a lot of employees and their livelihood depends on them existing. I think being able to just scale all of that down, see all the different sides of the business and develop these awesome relationships. I think that's what we've enjoyed the most, is just having that direct connection with the people that benefit from our work.
It's so valuable to be able to have an idea, be able to execute it and see the fruits end to end of that labor and be able to see in it, isn't it? It's just amazing.
And cutting out all the politics in between. I mean, it's good. Humans are political animals and relationship animals, and that's going to happen. But obviously, when you do your own thing, you can make that happen a lot quicker.
Yes.
And try things quicker.
And I guess for Map It Forward, the great thing is that there's so many corporate refugees, as you say it, that are coming into our space, into the industry, which I'm really hopeful for, because what it's going to do is it's going to bring an influence of professionalism with it. With the barrier to entry being so low for our industry, that we could really use that injection of professionalism as an example for the younger kids that haven't had exposure to that. It's just so super important. So I'm excited that you're a part of our industry now. It's really great to have you. Let's talk about some of the fun stuff that's confusing as fuck for most people. Well, I think for everyone, given that given that social media and the algorithms that are connected to social media move so quickly, it's we were talking a little bit off air about the idea of building an audience and how intense that can be, and what's the right way to do it versus what's the wrong way to do it. How have you guys approached that in Cocoa and Vine particularly?
Sure.
I think you can start this one.
Yeah, I think you can definitely try to chase a numbers game. We do it because we love the industry and we try and tell stories. So our approach has been, sure, you look at the numbers, sure, you look at the followers. You can go down a rabbit hole there because, as we know, Instagram had a huge change from chronological to a much more algorithmic-driven system.
In the news feed you're talking about, right?
Yeah, in the actual feed that you get. And that has changed a lot of people's approach to Instagram, and they have to adapt and have different strategies. I think our strategy has always been, wherever organic, we try and let the quality of the content talk for us, and engagement is more important for us than just raw numbers. So if we have a certain follower base, but we get a high ratio of followers or engagement, that's probably more important to us, and that we get the direct messages and that we're helping people. We feel that from our point of view, because it's a passion project, we're comfortable that the numbers will grow if we continue to provide the engagement, provide the quality behind it, and tell the stories at a local and international level. I do understand that some brands have numbers to chase, and that is a difficult thing to do because that algorithm changes regularly. People are fickle in what they will subscribe to and follow. So, but from our point of view, it is really letting the quality of the story and the relationships and the quality of the imagery and video as a differentiator for us, do the growth for us.
How are you defining quality versus shit when it comes to content? I mean, hey, we talk straight and Map It Forward. It's a thing for us. Good. I mean, Sonia, you've known me since I was a kid, and I've always been like this. Hey, just for the record, tell them I'm not like any different than I was when I was a kid.
No, you're exactly the same. Exactly the same. And it's like you're captured in time. You don't even age through that time either.
You're very sweet, but I very much do not agree with that. But like before I was doing this, before I was in the music industry, blah, 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 this is just me. People have come to me and said, the way that you communicate, is that like a put on for just so that people will listen to the podcast? I'm like, no, like the core value of me is authenticity. And the number of people that say, it'd be so much better if you didn't say the word fuck. That's so me. But at the same time, there are so many other words that should offend you other than the word fuck.
Exactly.
There are so many other things that I would love you to have a problem with. Anyway, let's not get started with all this. Just for the record.
I think it's hard because what's on social media and what's deemed as shit versus good quality all depends on your perspective. I think, photographers and videographers and people that love to see beautiful images, maybe even more critical of what they see as quality because they spend so much time behind a machine looking at all the detail, getting grading right, getting colors right, getting the how a picture looks and how it makes you feel. So they spend a lot of time in there. So you might find that professionals in the industry are a little bit more critical. The general consumer, I think, approaches it from, how does that image make me feel? Do I love it? Does it make me happy? Does it make me sad? They're not really worried necessarily about the technical detail. I think the quality for us, or what we deem as quality, is a little mix of both. You know, I kind of approach it
because
because
the emotion, and it's also technically, I mean, if you're taking a picture of a coffee and you're trying to tell a story of a cafe or whatever it is, obviously you want to show reality, but in its best light. You want to, you know, there's a million technical issues why a photo isn't executed well, and to your point, photographers get caught up in that and they forget the point of the story that they're trying to tell with a photo or a video. So it is that balance of getting it technically correct so that if somebody approaches us to make a video or anything like that, it looks production quality because they want that. They want the
and they're paying you for it, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. It's a professional service that you offer, and the editing needs to be done well. And guys, of all the professionals that I know, you guys are both up there with the people who require more of themselves than most any other professionals that I know. And so I know that if I was to come to you guys the next time I'm in Australia and say, hey, can you shoot me some photos and some videos for Elixir? You know, one, I know that you're going to over deliver on what I expect. It's just the way that you are as professionals. And it's something that I always talk to people about as a business in the coffee space, in any space really. Like, your number one point of customer service should be over delivering on your professionalism. And I think that extends through to social media. You should be over delivering. You should be posting beautiful content, not just beautiful from the perspective of this is what it looks like beautiful, but beautiful with regards to the text that goes with that.
That's
really important. I think that's the thing, and you're of the same ethic, and a lot of the people we work with are the same ethic. It's a personal thing. I don't think I could sleep at night if I put something up that was less than I thought I could do. You just become personally tied to the product that you do, and you feel personally tied to the product that represents the cafe, even if you're getting paid for it or not. You want to put your best foot forward for them and for you.
Like like Cocoa and Vine starts from the blog. And the blog is really writing about our experience, about the stories behind even just the architecture or the building or the cafe owners. And so when you read the blog, even though you get little pictures on Instagram and little stories up in our Insta stories, it really all feeds back into our blog and writing and putting content out there. Like, we all check each other's work. You know, anything before it goes out, we take the time to write it. We all check it and make sure that it reads right, that we've got links out to, if there's a new ingredient or if there's a new place that we've gone to visit, we give people
there's backlinks and things like that. For anyone that's listening that doesn't know what a backlink is, you want to have them in your posts, especially on blogs. Backlinks are just links that link back to somebody else's content on a completely different site. So
that's right. And also just to help inform and educate our readers. You know, there's lots of what we love about, being in places like Melbourne and Sydney is there's such a great sense of innovation around food quality. And yes, a little bit has been driven by how beautiful does it look on Instagram, but also people are trying to be creative about what new ingredients they bring in or mixtures of plates and dishes or, kind of
blends of
fusion on a completely different level.
And so, and people, as people come into the industry or as a consumer arrive at the product and they have different levels of experience.
Absolutely.
So in Melbourne and Sydney, they're pushing ahead very quickly. And if somebody's jumping on our content and they go like, I'm just not up there yet, I'm going to get there. And just trying to help them take those steps. So it's accessible content. But back to the point is that around quality too, is that, the people behind the cafes and the coffee and the restaurants, they put their life on the line to make this stuff happen. So we feel responsible to do what we can, because part of our brand ethic is not to do coverage of everything. It's to find out those unique and quality, innovative experiences. And those people are doing it with their heart. And we feel an obligation to them to tell their story as best as we can with our skills. So I again, I wouldn't sleep at night if I didn't do my extra 10, 20, 30%.
Oh, which is why you're on the podcast, because, you know, I'm not prepared to put just anybody in front of our audience to talk about social media. We want people to take it very seriously and not just be like, well, all I'm going to do is, as long as I put a photo up of something up every day, then that's good enough. No, that's not good enough. Even if it's just a pretty picture every day, it needs to be purposeful. It needs to be done well. It needs to have a story. Let's talk a bit about story. Let's talk about how you construct the story and decide on those stories, because whenever I'm working with my clients and they hate social media, they suck at social media, to use their words, right?
Yeah.
And because most people in coffee just want to roast coffee, or they just want to make coffee and serve it to people. They just want, I constantly get, Lee, I just want to run my fucking cafe. I'm like, well, this is part of you running your own fucking cafe.
It is. You still have to do these but parts. It's getting the story of your coffee and you out there.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of this is, the direction of your social media content starts well before you open your business, like by defining the intent and the concept behind why you're opening this business, whether it be a roasting brand or a cafe or a green bean buying company, wherever it is. I'm insistent on my clients defining for me what the intent and the concept is of their business. And once they can do that, then we can start extrapolating that out into other things like their buying philosophy and their customer service philosophy and all that kind of stuff. How did they then take that intent and content in your guys' view into their social media?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that, because I think we approach all our businesses and all our clients and the people that we work with in the same way. They always come up to us and might say, oh, I'm trying to fix this little bit. And I was like, okay, let's just start at the beginning.
About this specifically, all markets, but Sydney and Melbourne, they want to connect with the person and what the backstory behind the brand is. Sure, the coffee is amazing and all of that, which is the end product, but there's an extra halo of value add behind that, which is the backstory. So when they go, it's the experience, it's the space, it's the product, but it's also the people behind it and the philosophy behind it. And you need to bring that to the fore, so they go, amazing coffee, amazing beans, amazing person, amazing space. I get why you've done this. It's a moody cafe because that's your approach to it and that's your philosophy to it. Whatever it is, but that is the huge value add that we often see being missed out on when the value prop. Sorry, I'm getting very corporate.
No, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. The value proposition that you're putting forward in the coffee industry or hospitality industry is so much more than just the end product. That should, the halo of the whole backstory behind that individual commodity item is the halo of the story of the person that created it, the reasoning behind it. That's what people connect with. That's how you grow long-term, fellowship and loyalty. Inculcation and loyalty to your brand.
Yeah. And I think, so back to your question, Lee, I think what we always start with is why. Like, we'll go and talk to people and say, why did you do this? Because I think just like any business, you can absolutely have a passion for it. But in the day-to-day of being the accountant, being the marketing manager, being the business developer, and you set out to go and be a roaster or whatever it is, the day-to-day grind of running a business is a lot of work, and it can feel hard sometimes in the moment. And you know what we always find too, it can be really lonely. So I think absolutely. There's all these people now, and what I love about being in this point in time is that there's so much accessibility to being able to run your own business and start, all your different enterprises. There's so much access. There's a world out there, which is great. I also think that it can be really lonely and pull you into a trap. Yeah. So I think,
have you guys found that? Have you guys been experiencing that? You're lucky that you've got each other, but have you experienced that it can be, compared to our previous lives where we would be around lots of people all day?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It can definitely, when you're under the gun and you're working, like, we apologize if we're not on today, but we have to burn the midnight oil sometimes, and we have been for a little while. The fortunate thing is, because our approach to business is very relationship based, a lot of our clients, we have a direct relationship. So that social component is fulfilled for us because we work with people intimately all the time. So we get that. But at the same time, like over the Christmas period, I just work nonstop. and you can get isolated and you can lose track of reality because you're literally moving from one project to the other. So you do have to check yourself. But we're fortunate because we're with each other 24/7.
Yeah.
Luckily that we're
lucky you like each other, hey.
I'm not going to paint us as the poster child couple at all, though. I'll be straight. It's not always easy, right? Because, you know, our personal life becomes our work life, and it's 24 hours, and, you know, we're human. We're human. And
does that become difficult? Like, that's another thing in that people experience in the coffee industry. Usually if people are opening a cafe, they're doing it with their spouse. So does it become difficult for you guys to find a separation between your personal and professional life? Do you literally have to, like, okay, we're stopping work now and we're going to go have dinner and we're not going to talk about work?
Yeah, you often see me going, no more video, no more stories of me eating food. We're just
we love what we do so much, and it is
going to
fun.
talk to each other.
I think Sasha and I struggle with that because the girls are like, guys, stop. You don't have to take a photo of everything. You don't have to talk about everything. And we were talking to a new cafe.
We should do like the outtakes of me going, I'm not doing this. I'm not taking another bite.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was speaking to Jono yesterday, that's Sonia's brother, and I said to him, you know, because I know you guys were just in Sydney, and he's now moved back to Sydney, and he's like, look, what they do is a lot of fun, but man, the food comes at a cafe, and it's 45 minutes before you can touch anything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I feel badly, and the chefs feel like the chefs want it done at the peak of the thing. And I'm like, but you're bringing them too fast. What can I do? That's the reality of vlogging.
It's like, you can't go hungry with these people. You can't turn up to one of these things hungry when they're doing this, because you're sitting there, you're looking at the food, you're salivating, and Steve takes so long because that's what's needed to get the perfect shot. And to, you know, Sonia, sometimes they're rolling her eyes, and it's
we always say the camera eats first. So
I love that.
Anyone that comes with us who they were like, oh yeah, we'd love to be a stunt eater or a guest. I'm like, hey, don't come hungry, and make sure that you're really prepared that the camera eats first. It might be up to 45 minutes before you can dig in, and you're not really going to enjoy that. It's
I could never do that. I could never do that. Oh, there's two things. There's one thing I absolutely will never wait for, and it's food. Absolutely fucking not. I will never wait in a line for food, and I will never, like, if there's a plate in front of me and someone's like, oh wait, I just got to take an Instagram photo. I used to make fun of people like you in cafes as baristas.
I know.
We used to, Noah, who's been on this podcast. Huh? What were you
we don't those wanky people, but then they ask us to come in, and you're going like, well, it's got to be a good photo, and it takes time to do it.
That's why we always we do have a joke and a banter about, you know, this is just going to sit here and look really pretty for 45 minutes.
Well, the thing is, as people observing you people in a cafe, particularly when this started to happen, like I was at Harry's in Bondi when Instagram really became a thing, like out of control, a thing. People would show up and order off Instagram. They wouldn't even look at the menu. They'd just look at Instagram and point to a picture and say, that's what I want. It started to get crazy. And what we would see was Sunday brunch. Like, there's 200 people waiting to get a table at Harry's on Sunday brunch, right? Noah and I are standing at the coffee machine getting completely bent over with how many orders we have, right? But there's a table of Japanese tourists or bloggers or whatever that have come in, and they are moving things around the cafe to take to get the ultimate lighting shot, or they're all standing up creating a rig around one person, holding three people around one girl, holding her while she leans over the table to get the perfect flat lay. And it's like, people, the food came out an hour ago. Eat the fucking food.
And it goes, and I think that's the thing is, and that's the mechanics of it is obviously if we're asked to go to visit a cafe, we make sure it's the right time. They're aware. They're all on board with it. Obviously, don't go at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. That's insane. So that's the mechanics of it. And we're very sensitive to that because we understand about running a business. Ultimately, they have to turn tables to make a living, to pay the staff and pay the barista. The flip side of that is when you go in at the right time, and obviously you've got their support, they want you there, then everyone gets into it. Like a barista is like, no, I can do that coffee better. So you end up with a table of 50 coffees. It's like, no, I can do that heart better. I can do this better. And it's like, no, it's enough coffee.
But you know what? That's what we love.
Yeah.
So we always, because we're really sensitive that they're running a business, and we might need to hijack a table for the next 2 to 3 hours to get all the shots and things like that. We always say to them, what's a quiet time? When is it that you're experiencing a little bit of a lull and you're comfortable with us playing with food and you know, maybe running around the cafe? Because you'll often see Steve with a camera, me with a plate of food, running behind him to get the shot at the window, things like that. If the cafe isn't aware that, you know, lighting makes a really big difference.
And as wanky as it is, they understand that. Like we work with a couple of cafe groups here, and they know where to put the bloggers if you're on an invite. So they know exactly, they know when to come, and we work with them, and just being super sensitive because you don't want a bad vibe there when you're trying to capture their food. You don't want the chef to feel annoyed or the staff to feel annoyed, because it affects the photos and the quality of the work and the story.
Yeah. And then
just for some perspective for people who are probably not in Australia, most of our most of our podcast listeners are in the States. In Australia, most cafes have a chef, at least one chef, proper qualified chefs. That is the standard. Go and check out Coco and Vine's Instagram for proof of how beautiful the food is in cafes in Australia. That's not the case in the States. It's just not the case.
I think the biggest question is that everyone goes like, these are cafes, and a lot of our followers are from the US, and a lot of the comments that we get either in the feed or DMing behind are from maybe the US, because it's a huge market, and they go like, what is this deal of cafe on another level? This is a restaurant. It is a restaurant. It's a career. It's a profession.
It's absolutely a profession. It's a legitimate. I can buy a house on the salary of a barista.
Absolutely.
Back home, right? But the other thing is, we have such a more progressive in Australia. We have a more progressive culture, customer culture. You know, the ethnicity and the diversity of our customers and the tradition behind the way that they have a culinary experience is so much more embraced and developed than it is in a lot of other countries around the world with regards to the coffee scene. So there's a clear difference between a cafe and a restaurant. You know, restaurants typically are not coffee centric, whereas in a cafe in Australia, your coffee is as important as the food.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And if you're from Melbourne, you cannot do a cafe without coffee. Like, it's just,
are we going to do the Melbourne Sydney thing here?
Try and steer around it, because we do
duke it out between like the best two countries, the best
Sonia,
in the world.
You can't tell me that now that you're converted to be a hardcore Melbourne. You're a Sydney girl through and through.
I even have the uniform. We were given these when we were crossing the border. The Melbourne black.
And we've got our Victorian licenses now. So
stop talking. No.
We are spoiled as Australians in general. And then if you have the opportunity to visit and experience coffee in Sydney and Melbourne, we're talking about the top 1% of coffee in the world. It is amazing. And to nitpick between those two is stupid, because they are just doing amazing stuff. And we're just consistently amazed in both cities at the quality that we produce. Because we go out and we travel all around the world, and there is amazing coffee experiences over there. But I would say that we go to Japan, we go everywhere, and they go, Australia is a mecca for coffee.
It really is.
When you've got, so what was really interesting to us, and you traveled to Japan last year, so in July, we go to Japan at least once a year. We love it there. The quality and the change in that coffee landscape and the baristas there is impeccable.
Wow.
All trained in Australia. The Japanese baristas come to Australia, come to Melbourne, spend a couple of years, train with our baristas, and then go over to Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto and take it to the next level. It's
London, when we go to London, like they'll go like, they see it as cachet if they say they've got an Australian barista.
I remember in 2009 when I was working in London as a barista, and you'd walk around the streets, and it was really just starting to pop over there. I mean, well, not even really starting to pop. There was 2 cafes that you could go to that were any good, and but but the other cafes would have an A-frame out the front that said Australian barista.
Yeah.
That's how well would. Yeah, I can't. I don't know. Do you think Australians know that how good we are at coffee? The average Australian?
Oh yes, they do. Australian baristas amongst the most pompous in the world. Let me tell you, I say that as one. I say that as an Australian barista. I had to learn how to dial down my fucking ego when I moved to America in 2011 and be like, so I'm an Australian barista, you should give me a job. And I mean, it wasn't that obvious, but like it just, I was back then. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, do you think Australian consumers know how spoiled they are? No,
not at all. Well, hold on. Let me qualify that. They didn't used to know how spoiled they are. Now, what I notice is, so it's been about 2 years since I've been on bar here, and I constantly used to get in San Diego, particularly Melbourne, customers from Melbourne come in and on the top of their voice, oh my God, thank God there's an Australian barista here, someone who can make a decent fucking coffee. And I'm like, oh my God, how embarrassing.
We're now being embarrassing. I think that's the interesting thing about Aussies now traveling. We've now crossed that threshold where we can absolutely be embarrassed and go, oh my God, we have to have a decent cup of coffee.
Because we're the only ones in the world that know how to drink coffee. It's like, chill, because, oh man, and the thing you say to them, and I'm not shy about it, I'm like, you understand that everyone else can hear you in here, right?
Yeah. You're not using your inside voice.
No. And the worst part about it is that when they say that, what they're not prepared to hear is that, listen, you're in a different country that has a different coffee consuming culture. How about you just embrace the fact that America is much more focused on filter than they are on espresso, and espresso is exponentially increasing in its popularity. However, even though it's not great filter everywhere you go, or even good filter everywhere you go, it's just a different experience.
It is.
That would be like me going to Thailand and expecting them to have the best espresso when what they actually have is the best Thai iced coffee.
Yeah, and that's their culture.
And that's their thing.
And you embrace it when you're there.
Yeah.
You have to watch. There's a YouTube video of Conan O'Brien with his associate producer Jonathan talking about. So Jonathan spent like $500 on this Italian espresso coffee machine. It is the funniest thing to watch.
I've got to check it out. Can you send me a link?
I'll send you a link because it talks about that dichotomy between, people that love espresso coffee and love that style and talk about the quality and that, things are in Italian versus like the filter drip coffee that most Americans are used to drinking.
Oh, Mr. Coffee. I remember the first time someone asked me about a Mr. Coffee, and I was the only human in America who'd never heard of Mr. Coffee. And I said, and I'm a coffee consultant, and I'm like, what the fuck's a Mr. Coffee? And they're like, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Like, oh, sorry, I come from a completely different coffee. And obviously, you know everything in Australia. We know everything there is to know about coffee in Australia. You dumb, stupid, ignorant bitch, honestly. Not that I'm advocating for anyone to call themselves a bitch, because I shouldn't have just done that. But anyway, so if we go back to the stories.
Yes, yeah. I know we kind of went off there.
It's a conversation. It's not an interview. So we could go into whatever fucking tangent we want. So tell me, when we're talking about stories, right? I tell my clients to pick 3 stories that they want to tell through their social media, and to focus on that and to build content that's got a lot of clarity around 3 very definitive storylines. Right?
Yes, yeah.
So an example of that would be if they want to tell the story of their coffee sourcing as one storyline, the story of their customers as another storyline, and the story of their staff as a different customer line. There's other places that, they're very equipment focused. So having a storyline based on all the cool toys that they have in their cafe, that helps people understand the thread of what kind of content they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
What are some ideas that you guys have and some tips that people might be able to use around telling stories and
first of all,
stories to have?
We think of it very similarly. So we want to tell the story, obviously the person and why they're there and their backstory. Then very important to our audience is the space that it's being consumed in and how that adds value to the final product. And then obviously the final product itself. So it all comes together as the value proposition for the customer or the consumer that's consuming our content, but also wants to go to these places and experience it. So we are quite, at least in my mind, and I think we try to achieve that, is what's the backstory? How do you experience it in the space? Because that is so important. And then what's the final product and how that all
Why is
together.
it important, Steve? Because some people think that this is horseshit. Some people think that I don't need a story. Like, can't I just put pretty pictures up? Why is a story
It
so
might not
important?
be important to them, but it's definitely important for the person to bond to you as a person and a brand. People want, there's a lot of, I would say, because we worked in corporate, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with depersonalized brands now and large corp and commodity stuff. People want to feel, especially if they're engaging at a local level, they want to feel some sort of relationship. They want to know the person behind that because that ties them to it. They want to know that there's a bigger meaning behind this than simply just the coffee.
Yeah.
They appreciate the coffee, but it is like, what's behind that?
And I think it's because there are so many marketing engines and ways to corporatize and make it quite sterile. I can give you a million beautiful pictures. But if there's nothing to connect it with and it's not authentic to you, then if what I see on social media is not the experience I have as a consumer in your cafe, in your restaurant, or wherever I might be with you, then people go, oh, that feels, there's a like a cognitive dissonance there. They go, that doesn't feel right. I see that you've got lovely pictures, but when I come here, I don't get a sense of that's how I feel about being in space. It doesn't all fit together.
And do you think, and you know, we talk, I love small business, so I talk intimately with business owners of cafes and where they've come from. Do you think that the typical cafe owner and barista understand that the consumers, when they're at the table, are actually talking about what the backstory is? They're very interested about what the story of that barista is, where they came from, what the story of the cafe owner is, why did they do that with the space? Why is it all white versus all what? Do you think that the average cafe owner understands that conversation is being had? Because it is.
I think that the answer to that is twofold. I think that people either are completely oblivious to that, and a lot of the time rightfully so, because a lot of customers come in and just give me my fucking cappuccino with 2 sugars because I've got to get to work, right? And just make sure it tastes exactly the same today as it did yesterday. Do not let my coffee bitch back at me. But then there's the other side of that where I think that we have an overly masturbatorial approach to every little detail of everything that we do, thinking that, of course, I am the fucking best at everything that I'm doing. And don't you notice that the screws that I used in this door handle are just plain gold? And why don't you care? You know, it's one of those things when it's, if only there was a magical recipe of like, this is the way that every customer approaches it. What we're finding, the markets are very different in Sydney and Australia. In Sydney and Australia, because Sydney is all of Australia to me. I'm only kidding. Sydney born and bred. Hoorah. So where you've got cities like Sydney and Melbourne, and I'm not sure about other cities like Adelaide and Perth and Brisbane, but the average fit out for a shop is somewhere in the origin of $1 million now.
Yeah.
People here don't believe me when I tell them that.
No, that's very, very true.
And it's higher in Melbourne than it is in Sydney.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when you're looking at $1 million for a fit out versus somewhere in the order of 100,000 here, and most of it's bootstrapped and done DIY here in America, there's a different focus from the customer base here versus in Australia. And I think that is causing a frustration over here, because people wish that the market was a lot like what it is in Australia. They don't know how to create that. And what I keep telling people again and again and again is stop investing in toys and invest more money in getting people into your cafe and increase the attraction to specialty coffee and away from second wave coffee. So if what you're doing is spending more money on education of your customers, on cuppings, and paying your staff to turn up to cuppings so that they are sorry, just get that off there. Everything's ringing in my head.
Oh no.
Phones are all ringing like in my head. Let me just turn this off, sorry.
Yeah, oh good.
So what I think is happening is that I would like to see more cafes in Australia as well, to be honest, because we've hit a plateau in Australia where both in Sydney and Melbourne, the markets are severely oversaturated, which means that margins are tiny and minuscule. People cannot increase their prices, and because consumers will just go somewhere else, and they can't all decide to do it together because that's collusion, and they're not allowed to do that. So what I think that we should be doing as an industry is spending money on having our staff conduct public cuppings, public education sessions. And that's one way that we can invite the public into our homes, the home being our cafe, give them exposure to different ways of experiencing coffee so that when they turn up on their usual day, they know why they should be asking for a single origin pour over. It's all that kind of stuff that I would love to be seeing people focusing more on that than, hey, look at my pretty tiles. I got them imported from Italy and I absolutely could not afford them. You can remodel later once you've got people with a line out the door.
I think there's some really good cafes that have opened up in New York. We've spent a lot of time and been fortunate to spend a lot of time in New York, and we're like, it's that crazy bustling hustle of the city. But it's done some really good work around.
Give them a shout out. Who are they?
So Little Collins in New York.
Of course, they're Australians.
And they're Aussies, right? But it was a nice mix because there's a story behind it. So they've got the Little Collins street sign that was given to them by the Mayor of Melbourne to put up in the cafe, right? So, and you go in there and you can get Vegemite on toast. And when I was living in New York for a little while, and I really just desperately wanted a coffee and just some toast with some avocado or something, I could go there and go, but the stories that you get to tell from that about where that came from, and it doesn't have to be this massive fit out. It was cool. You could just go in, grab a coffee, but they educate you along the way and help you understand why do you have a flat white versus a filter coffee, a pour over, where are the beans coming from? You can take some of it home. I love this idea of now cafes and cafe owners who either have relationships with specialty roasting companies or they're roasting their own, but they're also sharing it with the public and going, hey, you can take some of this home. You like our coffee here? If you've got a mocha pot at home, or if you've got, a pour over or filter, you can take this and have the same experience.
But they'll guide you through that.
Dropping the arrogance so that you can guide people through it.
Looking at it, like we were out in the peninsula, and again, what amazes me about places like Sydney and Melbourne is you can go out on the radius of that, like 100 kilometers away, and they're still so devoted and they're willing to sit there. It's very hard for a barista when you're getting slammed, but they will take the time now. They realize some of those cafes that are progressive will take the time and say, tell me what you like in parallel types of food, and I'll find something that gives you an accessible, and then it creates an entryway for them to try more and more innovative blends or single origins that pushes the palate. And you can see consumers attracted to that. They see the texture and they see that there's an investment in them as a customer, and they'll give back if you've done that.
How do you translate that story from the coffee machine onto social media?
I think you've got to, the practical is obviously have some of that. If you're doing a post, try and bring some of that component in where the barista, maybe it's the barista's hand, maybe it's the branding, maybe it's the space along with the product. And then obviously all that deep texture behind it. So what we didn't realize, and we're starting to realize even more, and we've always done it, is that people will, if you put a good story below it to give context to the image or the video, they are reading it. They will go through and comment on all of that stuff. Like you can put 2 or 3 paragraphs and like, you think that the average person is whipping through, but if you cultivate an audience that is invested in it, they are reading every word and they're soaking it up and they're asking you questions about it. So it's supporting that. And then in your stories, often what we will do, sorry, this is getting a bit more mechanical, but we'll also do the stories behind the post that support it again, to give that, like if you're doing a picture of this lovely coffee with the barista there, then you obviously have a story that's running at the same time behind that to show the space. We want to move in. We're going to do a lot more video this year because that's our differentiator, and people are consuming that a lot now. And Instagram is making an investment in things like IGTV. They've extended their stories beyond 15 seconds in that they're all daisy chained together. We're going to capture more videos on phone and high quality videos. So we're seeing that if you can wrap that story around with multiple elements so that it feels more holistic. So the person's going, I get to see the space, I can hear the barista talking, I can hear the owner talking, I can hear you guys talking about this one shot. It's not just one dimensional anymore, it's the whole piece.
How important is it to use all the different expressions, let's say, of a particular social media platform? And let's use Instagram, for example. We've talked a lot about Instagram, but the same could be said for Facebook. For example, you know, you've got your posting, but because the algorithm doesn't necessarily guarantee that everybody's going to see that, how important is it to then repurpose content to go onto IGTV and through stories and all the other mechanisms that you have on different platforms?
I think it's essential because that people engage with you differently. We see a lot, like in our stories, we get an enormous amount of views and we get a direct connection and people asking us questions at the story because they consume it very differently. They understand our feed is there, but they also engage with us in a slightly different and probably more engaged audience. Sometimes on stories, they feel that more immediacy, and then they can go back to the post for the more static and in-depth. So that you have to do it. And now,
and it does have to be consistent across those channels. So you can't have content that sits one way on Instagram and your Insta stories and then go to Facebook and have a completely different experience or a disjointed experience, or go to Zomato here in Australia or Yelp in the US. And everywhere you go as a consumer for that cafe or for that restaurant should feel the same. And you can repurpose the content for it, but I want to feel the authenticity of the cafe that, you know,
and the continuity.
Continuity, but each platform has its own different what you can do more in. But to your point, within a channel, like everyone's very focused on Instagram now, there are those back channels. There's the ways to engage. So if you think of it, you put this post up, you invest in the post itself. If it's a still image, you invest in the actual description because people are reading those. You invest in the engagement, because even in an algorithmic point of view, if somebody's saying, often I see a lot of cafes or just people posting and they're not responding to people that are commenting.
I don't understand that.
I don't get that
the
either.
algorithm rewards you for engagement.
And I just go like, so that's a huge opportunity. And you know how hard it is in marketing to actually get a direct connection with a consumer, and you're missing that opportunity. And not only that, there's the channel of like the 15-second story, which is a lovely little nugget, and then they can react and comment with you there at a direct one-to-one relationship. That is a huge opportunity that I think a lot of people are missing, and it's there for you to use.
And we totally understand. I think back to the first comment that you made when we kicked off this live session is that, you know, some people just go, I just want to fucking roast, man. I don't want to do all this, you know, marketing. But if you're running a business and you want to be responsible about that, and you want to be able to sustain the people that you're bringing in, your baristas, your wait staff, your chefs, your people in the back, anyone that is part of that business, they're building their livelihood on that. And so by not investing in your marketing and telling your story, you're actually doing a disservice to the people that you're bringing into that family. So you can't cheap out on it in terms of, you can't only do it piecemeal or half-assed. you say, actually, you know what, this is really important to us. It means that we can sustain this business for the long term. So let's figure out what it is we want to do. You don't have to invest millions of dollars in it. Everything's accessible now.
And a lot of it's free. A lot of it is free. Like, use your phone. But my thing is, like, use the best quality that you can afford. If all you can afford is your iPhone, perfect. You've got your iPhone. Figure out how to get a decent, it doesn't even need to be great, but a decent quality photo and video going on, and be consistent. That's what sets the tone of your brand. The other thing you can do, absolutely. And the other thing that you can do is, if you want to have really great photos and you can't afford really great photos yet, and nor do you have the time to take really great photos, find a customer that is a photographer, give them free coffee for 12 months in exchange for photos.
Exactly.
Like, there is so many things that you can do. When I was a barista and I was coming up with with my first album cover, I couldn't afford a graphic designer, but I was in a cafe that was across the road from one of the biggest graphic design agencies in Australia. And you know, one of them said to me, like, tell me what's going on with your music. Is the album almost finished? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, do you have free coffee for the next 6 months? He's like, yeah. I'm like, will you design my album cover? I've got someone doing the photos. I just need someone, and I need a logo. That's how we did it. You know, I obviously got permission from the owner of the cafe. I got permission from him because he wanted to invest in my business. He wanted to support my business. But if you're the owner of the cafe and you want to be doing something like that, and you can't afford the photos, you can't afford the time to commit to it, find people who want to do it. I had a really, really great quote the other day from a graphic designer. He said, it used to be that designing a wine label was the hallmark of success for a graphic designer. Now it's designing a coffee bag.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big thing, especially in Australia.
And I think that there's a lot of that bartering that goes on.
Thank you, Airbnb. That has kind of like made all of that shit open to everyone. It
opens up building relationships in the sector. Like, we've got actually it's a restaurant cafe. No, it's actually not a cafe, but a restaurant and a cocktail bar that just up the street from us. We love working with them. They're amazing, and they had us come in and say, "Oh, you know, we're trying a new menu," and
they just invite us up, and we feel connected to them. And we're happy to do that.
And whenever we go,
provide photos, and I think that's a lovely trade-off, because it gives us content, and we love the experience, and it creates a relationship. So to your point, it creates, again, an investment from that customer who loves coffee. Obviously, they're coming every day, and they want to feel a little bit closer to the story. I think that's a great opportunity. But even just down to the basics, if all you've got is a phone, it is amazing how, if you just do a couple of really simple things, like put the coffee near the window, take it with the phone, get away from the fluorescent lights. You'd be amazed at some simple techniques that are free that you can really improve the quality on there, and it costs you nothing.
And there's so much information on the internet for teaching people how to do that. You know, the thing that I keep telling people is the #1 currency in the world when it comes to what we do and the relationship with our customers and how to bring them on board with our brands, whether it be in person or through social media, is connection, like genuine, authentic connection. And I think that the core of what you should be doing on social media is fostering more of that. That should be the end game.
That's the thing. Do you know, I just want to go back to a point, is that, you know, if you're a barista or a cafe owner and somebody walks up to your counter and wants to have a conversation about your coffee, you will do it. But there seems to be some sort of weird thing where, maybe because it's on a social media platform, they don't see them as the same level of customer or person.
Why do you think that is? Is it the disconnect of the screen, or what is it?
Disconnect of the screen, but it's also, I mean, obviously social media has a bad brand now. There's a lot of problems there. They see it as a large corporate entity creating, we're feeding the beast, and what are we getting back from it?
Addiction.
But actually, yes, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, what a problem.
Oh, dude, I was sitting here earlier today, like, because we posed this question about toxic masculinity on the Map It Forward Instagram. And I sat here going through the responses and the DMs and whatnot, and before I knew it, like I'm in the middle of writing a book. I can't afford an hour on social media doing fuck all or nothing. And so I looked up and an hour had gone past where I'm just like researching toxic masculinity and from a woman's perspective and a man's perspective. I'm like, where the fuck did the last hour of my life go? And I was completely completely not aware of this reality. I was so deep in that rabbit hole. I'm like,
that's a good point, because it can consume you if you're not disciplined about it. And as a business owner, if you're using it for business purposes, it is a great tool to connect to people. I know that, again, I can hear people saying, yeah, I've got a cafe to run. I can't respond to every DM. I get it. But I see feeds there where like 50 people have commented going, that is amazing coffee.
Yeah,
there's no response.
And that's
simply thank you. Hope to see you again. See you tomorrow. Like all of that kind of stuff.
Even just like a heart and a thank you, like even as a base message.
I know, you don't even have to write anything. You can just stick a couple of emojis in and people go, oh, awesome. Someone actually acknowledged, because the consumer is going to the effort to respond. Out of all the things that they could respond to, out of all the things that could distract them and take them down rabbit holes, they're choosing to write something about your cafe or your coffee or your food or the experience that they've had with you. At least acknowledge that,
especially because they don't put effort into it.
And it's the ultimate in the hierarchy of engagement. Like right down the bottom is someone liking your post, and then second is like that they've shared your post. And third is the fact that like that, you know, at the top of that pile is if they have actually engaged and shared your post, you know, like that.
And even within the comment hierarchy, you can see that some people just put a heart, but if some people write whole things going, I really love what you said about that thing and this thing. Tell me where it is, who runs that cafe. That is a huge investment. They're actually engaged with you. So to ignore that, you're going to lose that potential person.
And I think there's also an opportunity there as well, is that cafe owners or restaurant owners, they don't have to own that all themselves. They've got amazing staff that they bring on board, and whether that's the barista or the server who've bought into what they're doing as well. So use them as part of the stories and your media and your social campaigns, because they might have a different perspective too. And being able to get to know the people in a cafe is often what consumers like as well. So they might go there because they go, oh, I loved my coffee from this barista, or I really loved it because this server there was awesome, and I love how that he or she makes me feel when I go there because they treat me like a special customer. If you get them involved in your social media campaigns and your stories and sharing things across, that's awesome. You don't have to own it all yourself.
You know what's unfortunate about our industry when it comes from that? Millennials want to be financially compensated when social media content creator gets added to that. It's a clusterfuck. The number of owners that have been like, so I told my staff that they can actually all have access to our Instagram account, and they've all asked for an increase in pay if they're going to contribute to
you open one door, you're going to cause it.
The other part to that is, you know, one of my clients turned around and said, well, so then if you want to take videos while you're behind bar and post it, your pretty little latte art while you're on bar at work and post it to your own Instagram, I should charge you for that.
Oh wow.
Well, it's just become this headbutting between owners and you can understand where they're coming from. They're leveraging themselves as employees, and you know, every barista wants to be a fucking rock star these days and be Insta famous. Not everyone, but a lot of them now are using it as a tool to get Insta famous, particularly when it comes to latte art and things like that. But there's the understanding that, listen, both of them are mechanisms for each other's success. So you wouldn't be able to get this recognition and get your name out there if you weren't working at that cafe, and they benefit from you being fucking badass at what you do. So why aren't you leveraging each other?
I think it's more around it's how do you collaborate together? Because the people that you are bringing into, yes, you're hiring rock star baristas because you know people are going to come for the awesome coffee. So how do you work with each other to be able to do that? Yes, a barista has a brand and the things that they get really pumped because people come in for their coffee, for the way that they produce their latte art or their pour overs or whatever it is. They get recognition. There's ways to give back on both sides. It doesn't have to be these enemy lines. that people seem to want to create.
And that's the interesting thing, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this before, but that story has so many layers in a cafe context, where it's the owner of the cafe, it's why they have constructed the space they have, it's why they've chosen the beans that they've chosen, and why they've chosen the techniques. And then there's the layer of the rockstar barista in there as well, which is another story within a story, and people are interested in that. And they'll make their purchase. And as you know, I'm telling someone that already knows that, is that they're walking by and going, I love that cafe, but this person's not on, so I'm going to keep walking.
Hey, you know, and that happens so much more in Australia than it does here. But in Australia, I had people drive 3 hours to buy coffee from me.
Yeah.
You know, and they do it on their day off. If they move to Canberra, and you know, the tears, people legitimately cry when they're leaving their barista and moving to another city, and then on their day off, they drive 3 hours to come to you, 3 hours there and back to get a coffee. You cannot pay for that kind of loyalty.
Well, and that's the
it's
thing.
like every girl and their hairdresser.
So that's
absolutely damn fucking straight.
So that's the solid evidence that it is more about, it is inclusive of the story of behind the brand, not just the product. So when somebody says to you, I get it, it is so hard to run a cafe. It is not the romance that a lot of people maybe as corporate refugees come and think, well, you know, I'm going to make some coffee, it'll be cool, and I'll have a chit chat with people. It is hard work.
So I spend so much time, Steve, you have no idea how much time I spend trying to convince ex-corporates, or as you call them, corporate refugees, trying to convince them not to sink $500,000 into a cafe that's going to end up sending them bankrupt. It's like, don't do it. I promise, keep your corporate job for the next 6 months and go work in a cafe on your days off, because once you open this place, you're going to be working 7 days a week anyway. So
and I see it on people's face where they're like, that reality sunk in and go like, oh my God, I'm a slave to this. And if you love it, that's fantastic, but it is not that romantic thing of just hanging around, pulling a coffee and chatting with people. It is not that. And you can see it on
all. Not at all. Yeah. And if anyone's listening to this podcast and thinks that it is, happily send me a message. I will gladly pick up the phone and save you $500,000.
Yeah. I love the stories of people, like we go to cafes and
Hello. There you are.
There you go.
We're back.
Yeah. I love that backstory when you work with a lot of corporate refugees and we go in and we understand where they've come from, investment banking and all those things. And they, a lot of them understand that it isn't that. A lot of them have bought in 50% to the romance side of it and the reality of it, but seeing how their attitude transforms and how they deal with that that setting in of realization and how they reconcile it and they get their love back again, because you can see where they love it and then they realize that that's what they've bought. And then how do they get themselves out of that trough? Like, oh my God, this is my 7 days a week, day to day for the rest of my life now until I get out. And then they get their confidence back again, but I can see the value of this. But some people can recover, some people can't. But it's interesting to see that story play out. And because you kind of understand the business background of it, they will be quite honest with you about those challenges and how they feel at a personal level, financial level, as a profession.
And this is where we start with our stories with them. So we love talking to them and finding out their why. And then you see that little light go off in them, and go off. I mean, like it sparks.
Well, it's the reinvigoration that comes with it, right? Like
absolutely.
And I'm talking about this in, I hate to go on about this book, but it's something that's really poignant in this book right now that I'm writing specifically for coffee roasters. But it's this idea that being in business is going to teach you everything you never wanted to know about yourself, no matter where you come from.
Absolutely.
It really is. And there are going to be times, no matter how many millions you've made before, you go through a financial crash, you'll lose everything, and you'll have your ass handed to you, and you're eating brown rice for a month. You know? And that's just the reality of it. And as David Goggins likes to say, embrace the suck, because you cannot get into business if you expect that it's all going to be roses and daisies, because it's just not. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. To that point is like, I don't know if it's a large American audience. Australia has been on an amazing economic run for a very long period of time. And to a certain degree, yes, it's tough in the coffee industry, but the general retail economy up and down, but compared to the rest of the world, we haven't suffered. We may be heading that way now. So this could be a lot of people that maybe that Goldilocks syndrome might be coming to an end, and they're going to have to deal with the reality of that. So to your point, yes, people go through that, and I think we're probably going to see a lot more, especially in the retail sector, of people realizing how tough it can be and learning those tough lessons. But it does, if you do learn it, I know it sounds cliche, but if you do go through that and look at it objectively and take those lessons on board, it will make you a stronger business person and more resilient.
100%. As someone who has been through, I feel like I'm going everything that I've gone through now in my coffee entrepreneur days, I went through in my music entrepreneur days.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre to see how almost comical it is, how in order it's all coming back around. And you look at it and you're like, oh, I remember the last time that this happened. Yeah. Everything ended up okay. It sucked, and it sucked hard for a long time. But I'm going to get out of this quicker because I'm going to go ask for help. That was the lesson that I learned last time, was I need to learn how to ask for help. So I'm just going to go and do it now. I'm just going to go ask for help. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a different approach that my ego prevented me from trying last time.
I think that's the thing, And do you feel like now that you approach things a little bit more objectively and step back and go, okay, don't listen to your own bullshit so much. Just what is the situation? What have I learned from before? And how do I take active action to get myself back out of it, rather than just hoping for the best?
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. I no longer hope for the best. I cut the emotion. I allow, I'm a highly empathetic woman. And I'm very balanced with my masculine side, but I am still very highly empathetic. And so I allow myself a moment to sit in that, but typically park my emotion, revisit it later. And once I've had the whole experience, so that I'm not sitting in the microcosm of the trigger of the event. And so I park that and I sit in. And this happened really recently. And an example, I can give you a really concrete example that's a little bit ambiguous though. Somebody tried to sabotage some success for me. And it was done in a way that had happened before, but in my music business. And I was so hurt. I was so very deeply hurt that why can somebody... And up until that point, I never understood why so many people crossed my path that bullied me or tried to tear me down or were just horrible and unkind to me, because I have so much love to give everyone. I just want to help everyone as much as I can. I never understood why I very often received something quite opposite to that. But this very recent horrible experience turned out to be probably the experience I'm most grateful for in my life, because in my 43 years on this earth, I feel like everything that has happened to me has led to this one experience to give me the answer that I have been looking for my whole life. And so when I recognized that mindset where I was distraught, I was really upset at what had happened. And I took a breath and I said to myself, listen, this feels familiar. This feels far too uncomfortably familiar from too many other times. Can we stop this, please?
Yes.
Get out of your head, figure it the fuck out what's going on, and find the solution once and for all. Why is this happening? Why does it keep happening? And sure enough, it was about, just to tie it off, it was about me as an empathetic person. It was about me not recognizing that I attract sociopaths into my life. And typically I attract these sociopaths in my work life, as well as more so in my work life than in my private life. And so what I noticed, a friend of mine, Jamie Berry, who everybody knows and keeps hassling me about bringing him on the podcast. He will be on the podcast eventually. But he said to me, you need to read The Empathy Trap. And so I read The Empathy Trap and realized that the reason that this keeps happening is because my personality type draws certain types of people towards me. I'm not attracting them they're drawn towards me. I attract all different types of personality types, whereas I was harboring on the fact that, oh, poor me, why do I keep getting assholes in my life? I don't just get assholes in my life. I get all kinds of people in my life, but I get a disproportionate amount of assholes because of the personality type that I have. And reading this empathy trap, the empathy trap taught me that sociopaths find someone like me highly challenging, and that's why they seek people like me out. I'm like, fabulous. I have the answer. Now that I have the answer, I just got to find the solution. I got to find the fix to that. And I have. Like, I didn't know it was possible to experience this much freedom. We're in week 3 of January. Since the 3 weeks this happened, I've never felt so free. But it was because of the repeated experience in business and my inability to see the triggers that were causing this. I was viciously searching for the answer. And anyone, I mean, I'm sure, Steve, when you and I were working together, I may have mentioned this, because when you and I were working together on Love and Other Delusions, the album writing project, Elixir was just starting to happen. And I was getting so much hate mail at that point.
I remember that,
And what I realized is that I can get over this now. Like, I've got the solution. I understand this actually has nothing to do with me. This is like a self-fulfilling prophecy for sociopaths to come find me and fuck with my mental health. You know, it's just what they do. Oh, I know.
I have this inordinate ability to just attract these people that love to take advantage of my kindness.
Well, it turns out that the science says that we can't help it. Like, it's because of who we are that they hunt us and seek us out, right? The fact that I have people in my life that monitor me closely enough because they love me so much to say, Lee, this is what's going on. Go read this book and you'll get unhooked from this, is clear proof that assholes are not the only ones that I welcome into my life, right? But it's not going to stop people who are jealous of you, people who want what you have, people who are envious of you, all of these things. It's not going to stop them from coming into your life. And as a business owner, with the amount of stress that you have on you, you're like, I don't need this shit.
Like, and you don't want to attract, you don't want to open it up. And I know that that's why a lot of business owners in general, whether it's coffee or anything like that, because they don't want to attract the haters. And that's the really unfortunate side of social media.
That energy out of them and for their own benefit. And that is a hard thing to do as a business owner or anybody in society, is striking that balance of, I don't want to use the word filter, but filtering and protecting yourself, but also leaving yourself open to opportunities. And that is a tough balance all the time because you're being pulled in so many different ways.
Yeah, the keyboard warriors that are out there that feel like they can say and do whatever they want because there's not a face to them, you know. And I think that's what hurts.
I'm just going to close the door because I hear a dog barking.
This dog has kept us up for like 3 nights.
Really? That sounds like fun.
I love animals, but I feel like I just want to kidnap it and bring it into our house and give it some love and stop it from barking.
You have to shut the fuck up. Yes. Talking about the keyboard warriors. Excuse me. How do you mitigate the hate that you can get online through your social media?
That's really interesting. I think, and Steve will probably have comments about this as well, I think you can't give them airtime. They're always going to be out there. I think if it is very derogatory, very hateful, I think you absolutely have the right and entitlement to block those people and shut them down and report them. Because I don't think that just because we have these avenues and these platforms for discussion and engagement that people can project hate. I have a zero tolerance for that, and especially when it's personal and people attack you. I think some people like to go on there and have their little rants. I think just ignore them. I think for those people, you ignore them. And I think it's about setting an expectation that those people are out there and they're just hunting and finding ways to just disrupt and do stuff. And I just think that those people just have nothing better to do with their time. They're clearly not engaged and involved and have all these other creative or wonderful things going on that they just...
Yeah, they're just sad little fucking humans that have nothing. nothing of any value going on in their lives, and the only way that they know how to feel fulfilled is by going and trolling other people and shitting all over other people's success. I mean, you see it a lot. You see it a lot with latte art, to be honest. You see, you know, people trolling each other's latte art. It's like, this is not important at all in the scope of anything. Like, stop it. Be more supportive of each other. Like, I'm a big
thing.
Steve.
Sorry, not to jump in, but in our other businesses, we obviously have competitors in the marketplace and stuff like that. Instead of fighting, there's plenty of work out there. You come together because you can share. I know it sounds all kumbaya, but we do that. And they're like, this is so cool. We can finally have like a conversation and trade off and feed off each other and build a larger market. And it just makes your day-to-day nicer. You feel better about the work that you do. You feel better about just the space that you're in. You feel better with your customers. Like, it's unnecessary to waste energy in tearing down a business and a market. Just, again, I get it sounds cliche, but it works. Like, stop tearing each other down.
I think it's really interesting that in this day and age, you can differentiate yourself by being kind and collaborative and less hostile. I was thinking, wow, when did that not become our default about the way we work together and the way that we come together in various communities or, you know, businesses or industries or sectors or whatever it is. I was thinking, gosh, it's just these hostile enemy lines that get drawn.
I think they think it's a strategy to be hard-nosed and tear down the competition. But if you actually look at the progressive companies of the world, they're not doing that.
Yeah, they're collaborating.
They're collaborating, and you move together and create a bigger value proposition for people because they feel better about your business and about the market, and it doesn't feel aggressive. I think it's just the old way of doing business, which is destroy, kill, so that we have what's left. But what's left is less.
And I think, you know, when it comes to Cocoa and Vine and some of the stories we tell, the places we visit or get invited to, I think the biggest thing that gives all of us, you know, Mavis and Sash and myself and Steve, such a huge buzz is when they go, oh, we love you guys because you don't come in here and slam our business and tell us not to put this ingredient in or take stuff out. And we just typically go in and go, you tell us what you want to share, and we'll take great pictures of it. Tell us a little bit about your backstory, and we'll make sure we include that in the blog. And we've had almost owners cry going, oh my God, you're not one of those bloggers or those influencers that are just trying to, you know, take the ultimate shot for their purpose and completely disregarding us as a business.
It happens a lot.
It does. They get, and like I had a bro moment with just a connection with.
We say he had a little bromance.
No, but we were invited into like a cafe that's just starting out and stuff. And our typical policy is we go in, we go like, we're here because we want to experience what you do. You show us what you do because that's your thing. We're not here to dictate or swap this ingredient out or can you do this? Just go for your life. And you like the emotion that comes out is like, oh my God, this is my work. And somebody wants to appreciate my work on my terms in my space. And it just changes everything because we get it. Instagrammers and food bloggers have a bad rap now. Like there's a lot of very self-consumed.
Everyone's a fucking critic with no experience. Like the worst thing about it is like someone's going to come in here and tell me that my coffee tastes shit, but they're ordering a soy latte with 3,000 sugars in it. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's not what I built this cafe to do.
Exactly right. And I think that's one of our big philosophies. We're not amateur food critics. We're storytellers. And we want to hear what you do and why you decided to do it. And we'll share that with everybody. So who are we to come into your cafe and with all we know how much hard work goes behind the scenes, as you do, right? Of picking the menu, picking the coffee, picking the design, the location, you're putting, you know, $500, you know, $500,000 on the line, you know, if you're lucky, this is all contained in this little bubble. And you have some random person on Instagram who comes in because they go, oh, I've got 10,000 followers and I think I can, you know, take some photos of what you're doing and I can don't put that here and that's shit, or, you know, we're just going to rearrange all your hard work for our purpose. I'm like, that's arrogant, and that's not fair.
I'll tell you what's more arrogant, and something that's pissing cafe owners off all over the world, is those Instagram influencers that walk in and say, I have 50,000 followers. I'd really like to have lunch here. Can it be free, please?
Free.
So wrong.
It just, do you know how much it hurts us? It makes it, we feel the pain, not just as people that have an Instagram account and a blogger and a blog and things like that, but as a business, we go, oh, that hurts. That arrogance comes back to the hostility and the entitlement and all these kind of negative things that have come out of things like social media. There's really good stuff about it, but that negative side has drawn out these behaviors of entitlement on people that is unwarranted and unnecessary.
And we feel that sometimes when we go in, even when we're being invited, and then you just have to do that, let them know that that's not what we do at all. And one of the first gestures is, you just show us what you do, because we already know. We obviously do the research, because our idea is not to go and critique. We go and we curate. So we're looking for people that are doing interesting and quality things. So if we're there, we've kind of already done the backstory. So we want to hear what you do. We want to see what you do. It's not for us to dictate. And that drops the boundaries right away. And it's almost like they go like, oh, I didn't know foodies were like this. Like they're like, and
it's funny.
How sad is that?
We know when a cafe has had a really bad experience or has been having some bad experiences, because when we're asked to go in, we can hear the message in the message. You can only have one coffee, one thing, or only to the value of, $50 or $100. And that's totally fine with us. And we absolutely go.
I respect that.
We respect that. And we might come in and actually we can use that money, but we might spend a little bit more to experience other parts of your menu. But we know that they've had a bad experience because they'll invite bloggers or they'll invite influencers to come in, and they'll go, I'm going to order the most expensive things on your menu. I'm going to order 4 or 5. The worst one is,
can I have everything on the menu?
Yeah.
What the actual fuck are you doing? Thinking you can walk into a cafe and say, I'm going to have everything on the menu, please. No, you can't have everything on the menu.
And people should be defensive against that. It's terrible. That's taking advantage.
We have seen that, where influencers and bloggers think that because someone's invited them, that all of a sudden they have an entitlement to demand and to create this expectation going, well, now you're here to service me because I'm bringing in my followers or and I'm like,
worship at my feet because I have 50,000 followers.
Exactly. And I was like, hang on.
We see ourselves as a guest in their house. We're a guest in their house, and we don't want to. I think, like you, we're empathetic, and you can feel the vibe, and it makes me uncomfortable if people are defensive, and you want to do everything you can to make them feel like, hey, we're not here to tear you down or take advantage. We actually want to enjoy the experience of what you do. So you do have to do a bit of that work, but it's an indicator of how things probably have gone badly wrong in the industry. And we just try and steer away from that. And that's one of our differentiators, is like, we get it from a business point of view. We run businesses. We all understand all that stuff. So we just want to enjoy our experience and tell your story. And then you can see the malls drop.
The other side of that is people who are trying to leverage other people's brands, so other influencers. Let's say I use Elixir for an example. So we had a pretty firm goal of what we wanted to achieve this past year. We wanted to get to 10,000 followers, and we achieved 10,000 followers. And we had a very strategic approach in how we would do that, and we stuck to our plan, and it worked. And they were all. We didn't pay for anything. I'm so against people paying for followers and paying for likes and paying for all that shit. And listen, you are going to cop it right up the backside the second that those platforms use their crawlers to remove. What they do is, like, I remember the year that YouTube did this for the first time. The labels had all paid for all these views. And so YouTube used its crawlers to go and find the source of all the paid views. And all of a sudden, Kelly Clarkson's videos and Pink's videos and, like loads and loads of really big artists were dropping 2 and 3 million, 4 million, 10 million views of videos. And Facebook does this all the time, and Instagram does it as well. So like, if you're somebody who's going out there and paying for this shit, it might work for you for 55 minutes, but let me tell you, at some point they're going to do a cleanse, and everything's going to drop, and everyone can see that it's a hoax.
Absolutely. And you can see that from the levels of engagement. So a lot of things that we look out for is, we go, oh, that person might have 20,000 followers, but they're only getting 120 likes or 50 likes on their photos, and they're getting no comments or really limited engagement. So that's how we kind of use that as our barometer.
There's actually
to
tools
test.
out there, and Sasha's found some good tools that you can go to an account and measure an account to see how legit it is. Like how.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think that might be a really important thing for any cafe owners and people like that, is that you can absolutely leverage the influencer community and the blogging community. Just be picky and choosy about who you bring into the fold. And like Sasha has found when we're doing stuff, is that, try and get some of those tools to understand what's the real engagement of that
just
person's
look at the account. You
influence.
can see, like, if they've got 50,000 followers and only 2 comments and 50 likes, that's a bit weird. And they might have had their growth before the algorithm changed. So that's the other thing too, is that a lot of the big accounts. It's not throwing stones. It's just that you go, like, I mean, ultimately, I think, who knows what Instagram's plans are, but they are trying to reward quality and engagement. So, and if you look at some of the stuff that's coming out of the social media press, they're trying to de-emphasize total follower count, and they're trying to emphasize quality and engagement as a ratio. They're trying to say, like, guys, we get it. You're in pain now because you're not growing like you were before the algo change. Please focus on engagement. So if you've got 2,000 followers, but you're having amazing engagement, we prefer that. Stop taking. But the industry is very hooked on total follower count.
And this is where I think, like, having a clear understanding of the vision of the story that you want to be telling. Like, I think if you can extend the barista experience from the espresso machine onto social media, that's what you should be aiming for.
That is that layer within layers, and there's so many, and it gives more opportunities for different customers to connect with different elements. Whether it's the owner, whether it's the barista. Why is the barista doing this? Oh, he's on Thursday and he does this, or she's on like that. They love that depth. And it's not that hard to achieve. I know it seems that way, but it's breaking down that mental block in cafe owners and coffee professionals' minds to go, people want this, and it isn't actually that hard to do, and like they'll reward you for it.
Like that restaurant that we were mentioning that was up the road. Their whole story is built on their love story. So it's a husband and wife that escaped from being another corporate set of refugees and wanted to create this business, and so everything about how they communicate, how they choose the naming of their cocktails and the naming of their meals and dishes and things like that is all around their love story. And when they post about each other and they're like, oh, he's behind the cocktail bar and look at him, isn't he a cutie? And then he'll post about her. And so you see that thread of authenticity. And when you meet them in person, you can see how in love they are. It's really cute.
And it is actually,
that's awesome.
I won't mention the brand, but it is the person that it's the couple, and the wife manages the account, and it's her engaging, and it doesn't. You can see where she's doing the effort, and it's not. I assume it's not consuming much of the time because she loves it, and she keeps that story going, and it brings people to the restaurant.
Can you mention the account? Do you mind mentioning the account so that we can go and check it out?
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. P.
Oh, I love that.
In Brighton. So, and we kind of loved it too, because like my mum and dad used to be called Mr. and Mrs. P. But we were taken there by some friends, and then we took some photos with them, and then
they just every time they have an event or whatever it is, and even if we go in off our own back, they're just like, and they follow us, they comment out if we put a story, and we went up there with some friends
on New Year's Day.
And they were camping, like the owners were camping, and they monitor the thing because they're interested in their business and what happens. They saw us in their space, and we have these lovely exchanges, and they share personal stories. But you can see that it's not draining to them because they've cultivated this story that is something that they're invested in, and they love telling the story of everything that they do, their food, their staff, their space, and their story as a person. So while it might, if you're very sterile about it, it can seem almost laborious to do it because you don't feel connected as an owner to it. They clearly feel connected, and they feel that that's their ongoing story, and they can see that value coming back to them and people connecting with them as people and as business owners.
And everything they do is about quality. Their food is incredible. The presentation is impeccable. Their surrounds, like the investment that they've made into how they built their restaurant is beautiful but super accessible. Like anyone can come in there, and it's just all their staff, whether it's from the kitchen to the bartenders to anyone, all has that thread that connects them together, and you feel there's also authenticity in the way that they've chosen the people that they work with, and they all celebrate each other. So they celebrate the chef that they've got in the back of the kitchen. They talk about their bartenders. They're like, "Oh, you're in safe hands. Don't worry about it."
And all the accounts work together. And they do things like we were talking about, instead of tearing down each other components of the industry, they'll like have a winemaker in, and they'll invite their customers in, and they'll do a wine masterclass pairing with the food, and the winemaker has the stage, talks about it. They come up and talk about the food that's being served in a very communal local space. And you can see that connection for the brand growing. Does it take a bit more effort for them? Does it pay off? Absolutely, I think.
They've got this really authentic engagement, and you don't have this disconnect between what you see on their social media channels and on their website to the experience you have when you go in there.
Genuine.
That feels continuous for us. We've gone in there separately to being invited. So we went in there, and that experience that we had then is the same experience that we had when we went in there. It was all the same. It was really cool.
And I guess for a cafe, if you're a cafe, you're a suburban cafe or even a city cafe, if you've got a solid high engagement 5,000 followers on the high end, right? They should be your local customers. Like what you should be doing, and how I talk to my clients about how they build their social media is go and find the people in your local area that are on the Instagram. Start following them. Start following them, start engaging with their content, offer them a free coffee through their through messages. And make it an authentic kind of exchange, not a bot that sends someone a message if they follow you. Like, fuck, I hate that.
People are savage.
We hate it too.
The damage that does is huge.
It's massive. The number of people that keep saying to me, Lee, you should put a bot on. No, I shouldn't put a bot on anything. It's just so repulsive to me. But for a cafe, if you invest the time into going and following people who are in your local area, and the way that you can do that is just like go onto Instagram with that little part where you can click search, and you go and search people that have visited the location that you're at. Right? Or local business to you, start following them, start commenting on what they're doing. And like I said, offer them a free coffee. A person who buys, especially in Australia, a person who buys coffee from a particular cafe is somewhere in the order of $3,000 to $6,000 worth of business a day. A year. Right? And so if you can, the return on investment from our free coffee is so worth it. It's an authentic engagement, and it's how we've built it's a lot of how we've built our 10,000 followers so far for Elixir. We went and found people who were interested in the same kinds of things as what Elixir is, which was really difficult because we're the only brand in the world that's doing what we're doing. We don't have any competitors, so we can't like go and follow our competitors, the people who are following our competitors. But what we do is follow people who have an interest in affordable luxury products, because that's what Elixir is. It's the highest end coffee product as a ready-to-go beverage in the world.
But accessible.
But it's accessible. And so what we did was we connected by following people who were in the niche that we have. And we have a hugely successful return follow rate on that. Right. And then what we do is we establish a connection with them. We don't stalk anybody, but if we see that there's a a genuine connection there. We start that. And what we notice about our account is people don't comment on our photos. They DM us rather than commenting on our photos.
Yeah.
Which is so bizarre to me. I'm like, I don't know how the algorithm's gonna work with this. Like,
see that, but it would see that interaction though.
It does.
Yeah.
It was really cool actually, because the other day I was following a couple of people who in affordable luxury stuff around Las Vegas. And we got hit back by someone who's about to open a business over there that sells luxury products. And he DM'd me and we started a really great conversation. He's, thanks so much for following me. I'd never have found you guys otherwise. Would you consider selling us to us wholesale? We had a 2-hour conversation and it was awesome. But the great thing about that, it's intentional following. These people just go like follow people willy-nilly. I'm not sure that anyone who's not Australian will understand what I mean by that.
We get it.
They'll be like,
randomly, random.
Willie Nelson, yeah. But just don't go and just follow anyone. It's like, be intentional with the people that you're following, because your intention is to start a conversation. When you walk into a room, you want to start conversations with people that are about them as much as they are about you. Like, it should be primarily about them. So go and find people who you're going to have something in common with. So starting that conversation is a lot easier.
I agree 100%. And just to bring it back to that case that we were talking about with like Mr. and Mrs. P, the local cafe, it is amazing where they've become so savvy now. I don't think like businesses like that sweat the total number, because they're very local based. They sweat the quality of engagement for that number. And what is amazing is that, so we're foodies within the space, and in our local area, there's amazing cafes and restaurants. And they see us going to a cafe, and there may be a wine bar or another cafe. They will actually comment on our photos on the other cafe and say, those guys are amazing. And they all support each other. And then it doesn't feel adversarial. It feels like a community, so that they're putting the effort into the people that are going to obviously being returned to the business, which is those local people, especially for a cafe. And they're tying all that together between the food bloggers who live locally or work and have been gone around all their places. They're complementing other businesses in the area, and they create a little community within that larger universe. And you can see that what they're getting back out of it is so much more value than just simply going for maximum exposure in not contextually right areas, right? It's great to get as many followers as you can, but for a small business, focus on what's going to get you that return and engagement. And that doesn't necessarily mean for them that it is the highest potential larger follower numbers. It is that engagement, but also breaking down those barriers of going, hey, somebody's over there, they'll comment in a collaborative way on a competitor or parallel business. It actually makes the consumer feel good about going to both businesses.
What? Go on,
sorry,
Sonia.
I had a question for you. How did, because when you started Elixir, it was in Australia, and then you got to take it overseas. With social media and digital presence, you can bring this whole global community together. How did you change your strategies when you were looking and targeting followers here in Australia to opening that up to a more global kind of reach? What changed about how you targeted your followers and brought them on board?
That's a great question, and the answer is quite strange. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't because. So a lot for me is all about like decide on the strategy and be really flexible with how it's going to progress in case it's not working. But I've really developed executive skills. It's the only thing that I really excel at. And so I'm very good at setting goals and understanding a strategy and the strategies behind problem solving anything that's not going to work well. Right. So for me, it was about, okay, what are we trying to do? We tried to do it in Australia. And I think globally with everything that I do. Steve will attest to that. And so the strategy in Australia was very quickly escalated to we're going global. And so if we're going to go global, who are we attracting to this? That was the most difficult part for me. How do we figure out who our avatar is? And honestly, we're still working on it, because we don't have anyone that came before us that was able to say, like, we can't steal anybody's ideas, anybody's model. We just can't. And it's a constant conversation. Our Elixir dealers are trying to figure this out as well. Like, who is the perfect Elixir customer? So in moving from Australia to America, I just was using, because it was working in Australia. You know, we escalated from 0 to 3,000 followers very, very quickly, and then went really quickly to 5,000 followers after that, using the same strategy. But going from 5,000 to 10,000 was like pulling fucking teeth. And the last 1,000, that was the hardest. I think the last 100 was the hardest of all of it, because, and I spoke to other people about this. It's almost as though Instagram, because they reward you so highly for getting to 10,000 followers, it's so hard to get that final number, right?
They throttle it back.
Oh, fuck yeah.
We're going to make you work for it.
We see that in our...
We see it in ours as well.
Just like it's just
they cap
walls, and you're going like, what do I got to do?
Really, it was really tough. I had a friend contact me, shout out to Shift in Sydney, because he was experiencing the same thing. It's like, you know, you get to 9,900 and it takes you months to get to 10,000. You cannot grow at the same rate as it took you to get to 9,900. And he kept running competitions and all that kind of stuff, and they still kept throttling him back. And but once you get there, it's like, okay, this is going again. And you can use all the fun things that they reward you with for doing that. And it's well worth it. Like, if you are creating a global brand, your number one strategy should be, how do I create authentic engagement that gets me to 10,000 followers as quickly as possible?
That's the thing. Yeah, it is that thing, is how do I create authentic engagement that will get you there, rather than a lot of people try and game the system to just get there, but you're left with a hollow brand.
Well, exactly. Like, what's the point of getting there if you've got no one to buy, or the return on investment that you get from that is zero?
And they're all ghost accounts or something.
Absolutely. It means nothing. For anyone who's watching, who's listening or watching, who's like, well, so what are the rewards that you get? The number one reward that you get from getting to 10,000 is that in your Insta stories, you can link to things. And that shit is gold. Like, the number of people who will click on your links, who will buy from your links, will go to blog posts, all of that. I mean, that shit is gold when you're selling, particularly if you release internationally. Like, it's a big deal. If you've got a blog, that is gold to you.
It is.
And so, you know, for us, it was important. But it was hard work, to the point where it was sometimes demoralizing whenever they'd shift their algorithm, and the things that you're using to get followers and create engagement just weren't working anymore. And it's tough. Like, I spend the first hour of my day, my first work hour of my day, doing emails on social media, and I find myself having to cap it at an hour, because I could easily spend a number of hours doing social media. And the reason I don't let anybody else do my social media is because my brands, both of them, are so very tied to who I am as a person. And
it's hard to outsource that.
Oh, it really is, especially when you want that voice to be so authentically you. And so I happily outsource other things, but social media I will not outsource. I do outsource the taking of the photos. Shout out to Lost Soul Media. So we've outsourced.
They do amazing work, by the way.
Thank you. They're based in California, in Los Angeles. I do this weird thing where I'm like, the big thing is the same as the little thing. Los Angeles is not the same as California. Los Angeles is a whole other paradigm to everywhere else in the world, right? It's so fucking crazy. But it's one of those things of, you've got to prioritize what is important to you as a business owner. And for me, I need for the voice of our social media to be me. It's not my face. It's absolutely not my face, but I need to know that, you know, in the legacy that we leave for the coffee industry, having with both of these brands, Map It Forward and Elixir, both of them are innovative in the space that they have.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I'm not good at opening businesses that mimic what other people have done. It bores the shit out of me. But in doing this, if I am going to open something just for money, I've got no interest. I want it to affect people. I want it to be something that gets people excited in their soul about, oh my God, this is so different.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change on your geography.
No. Yeah.
So
and to your point, if you build it on authenticity and they get a whiff that it's no longer authentic, then they'll just
they can smell that shit a mile off, can't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because consumers are so much more attuned to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you know, we used to read microaggressions on each other's faces.
Yeah.
You could tell when someone was lying and just by like the twitch of their eye or something like that.
Yeah.
Now I feel that people are acutely aware of when somebody is being disingenuous on social media to the same. They can read those kinds of microaggressions.
Absolutely.
Just what words you use and
it's not
what
just,
reactions and
it's
what
not just
emoticons.
words. Yeah, it's not just words and emoticons. I think it's also their choice and selection of photos and what they choose to portray or focus on. It's really interesting. Like we follow a lot of people as well, and we do it out of interest to see, how is that person transforming or evolving as their accounts grow, as their followers grow, and you can see the change sometimes in where they originally started to focus on something that they were passionate about to
versus
then
a paid post
to potentially then turning it around and focusing it on themselves and turning themselves into the brand that becomes the influencer. And you watch this transition and you go, oh wow.
It does turn you off when they
and you go, it kind of feels
when they
a bit...
use the platform to tell stories about other people in the world around them, then it becomes about them. I get it. If you start it that way, that's fine. But when you can see that temptation to become Insta famous takes over and you go like, but wait a second, it was the content that I was interested in. Sure, you were part of that. But when it just shifts to you.
Now there's just too much cleavage.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Steve calls it boobygram.
But that's absolutely what it is. And a guy's showing too much of his own cleavage, or too much of his tats or something like that. It is just not flattering. And going back to what we were talking about, the different elements within each platform, I find that particularly with cafes, I find it's really great to have that gorgeous, like, beautiful photos in the cafe. But how daring a brand can be by going live on Instagram.
Yes.
Exactly.
But you can be rewarded for it,
right?
Too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it shows an extraordinary amount of integrity, depth, and authenticity. If you can go live, let's say a barista wants to, show their chops as with regards to their latte art, going live and doing that live.
That's huge.
The clout that you gain from doing something like that. What do you guys think? Go on.
No, go finish your question.
What do you think the return on investment is from because it takes some balls to do that. You can't have perfect light, and because it doesn't adjust as quickly, and your grey hairs might show and all of that. But that kind of thing is, how heavily is that rewarded, do you think? What's the return on investment from that?
I really think then it gives an opportunity, if you're brave enough to do that, and admit if you screw up, that maybe you're nervous or whatever it is. It shows that vulnerability, and people want to know that you're human and they can connect with you. It makes you more human, and I think that adds to the authenticity.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think, and I couldn't agree more. I'm so fucking sick of perfection and this idea that everything has to be this perfect nugget. I love seeing people doing what they do. We all screw up and we're all human, but I think this obsession with creating this perfect photo on this perfect moment with this perfect shot in the perfect light, I feel like it does everybody's head in. but also it doesn't make you connect with the real people that are behind it. So
that's the power of Instagram.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, you can have a lovely story to show the product at its best, to get the, the eye candy and the likes and stuff like that. But then you show that other side of it behind and go, this is what it takes to make that product.
Right.
Yeah, can I hit it every time? Did I go out and drink too much last night as a barista? Yes. Am I pouring as good as I could? Am I watching the grind as much as I should? Is the humidity changed and I've just forgotten it? Like all of that stuff, but it's being honest, and it gives people that education behind the scenes to go, oh, now I understand why there's so much effort and the cost of coffee is what it is, because these people have to deal with all these things and they're willing to show me.
Yeah.
And it's really so heavily believable, right? Like the courage it takes to go live on Instagram and talk about something. It's a lot of the reason why we do this podcast live is because we want people to understand, like, these are real conversations. These are how real conversations are had. We don't edit anything. We talk really straight. The reason we have the people that we have on this podcast is because they're badasses, and they're not pretending. They're not like, they're not people who are like, oh, wait, can you stop? I need to say that differently. You don't get do-overs on this podcast, and it goes.
Can I do this whole thing over again?
If you have the time to, I could talk to you two for 6 hours and still not get bored of it. You know that. But I think it's fun. It's something where I would like to see more cafe owners have more fun with their following. Especially because if they're going to the trouble of building a following of a couple of thousand people, and they're all people who are from within their local area, those people get to know each other and they all start engaging, and it becomes something where it becomes its own organic growth and its own beast, and that community becomes something that grows and grows and grows.
Absolutely.
People want to be a part of that, but it takes a fuck ton of effort to start it and make it happen.
Yeah, you just got to get that momentum.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was saying that I was so sick of perfection, because in the pursuit of perfection, we've lost our ability to have fun and to make fun of ourselves. I'm like, that's what I loved about being Australian, is that we could be self-deprecating. Everyone takes themselves so seriously right now, and you go, "Wow, we've lost our essence and what made Australians super cool." Like my niece says, super cool, but it's what made us cool, that we were self-deprecating enough and we didn't take ourselves so seriously, and that we had fun. That we had fun. We're not seeing a lot of that anymore in this pursuit of perfection.
Look, my favorite, hands down, my favorite selfie to shit all over is the one where someone's sleeping with their dog, and they're making out like they're lying there and their eyes are closed, and they're making out like somebody's come and taken that fucking photo. You can't see their eyes in it at all. They're trying to pretend like they're really sleeping. Dumb stuff. Like, what?
Stop it. I'm like, stop.
It's just vomit-worthy. Stop it. People that you look at someone who's done that and you're like, oh fuck, unfollow. I am never going to engage with your content again. Yeah. What a great place to leave this conversation. On the sleeping selfie.
On the sleeping selfie. That's it.
You guys have got clients to see, and I want to be really respectful of your time. It's
no worries.
It's such a blast to have you two on this podcast, especially since I've known you both most of my life. So
it's been a blast for us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing for our industry.
Oh, no worries at all. We're going to continue to do it and enjoying it. Yeah, and we love what you're doing with Map It Forward, and
thank you so much.
Creating a community. I think it's like kindness is one of the most underrated values and virtues, and bringing people together and doing that in a really authentic way there needs to just be more of it. That needs to be our default for any kind of business in any sector. So
hoorah to that.
Really love what you're doing.
Thank you guys. Have an amazing rest of your day. See you later.
Yeah, you too. Bye.